Hi, Greg Dell here with attorney Stephen Jessup and attorney Alexander Palomara. And today we're going to talk about a resolved case that Stephen resolved against Unum. And guys, we love getting together every week. Every week we resolve several cases on behalf of our clients, and we always talk about these cases because we want to know what's going on at these companies, what strategies we use, because it benefits all of our other clients and it helps us provide a better service to our clients. So this case, Stephen, that you're going to talk about, we're really happy about this victory because it was on a very tough issue which deals with migraines. So we'll get into everything that you did, and then we'll relate some other experiences we have and give people some tips so that they can handle their own cases and know how to protect their benefits as well. So tell us about your case against Unum.
Yeah, this was a tough one. This was like what I call like a Hail Mary case to get this one approved. My client was a customer service representative who worked from home for a bank, a private financial investment firm on the West Coast. Suffered from migraines. Like a lot of times we discussed, filed, short-term disability was approved, and they did approve the long-term disability for a period of time. About 8 or 9 months of it before they had her file reviewed, which Unum typically does, by one of their own employee doctors. And that doctor indicated that there wasn't enough, objective evidence of impairment that would prevent her from working. One of those common arguments, well, migraines are subjective, only you know how many headaches you have or how you're feeling, things of that nature. So they denied the claim.
I want to just stop you there because the statement you made where they said migraines are subjective, you only know about that. I mean, that is basically a true statement.
Correct.
How else are you supposed to prove objectively? There's one way, obviously, if someone has a tumor or they've had a brain surgery or they've had a traumatic brain injury,
Correct.
then yeah, you can say you had an injury or you had an objective finding in your brain. But for 95% of the cases that we handle and 95% of the people in the entire world that have migraines, what's the objective test to prove that they really have it?
And that's one of the biggest issues and what makes them so hard, to begin with. So in doing her appeal, we tried to investigate various ways to be able to establish restrictions and limitations stemming from it. Unfortunately, in her situation, a lot of those kind of went nowhere. Her doctor was in agreement, believed her. One thing I had her do was start keeping a headache log, just as a way to kind of document a day-to-day basis, and knowing going in with Unum, I mean, in my personal experience, when Unum denies a claim, it's very difficult for them to overturn their decision. They will do everything to deny once a claim's been denied with them. So we did get support from her doctor. Her doctor was willing to go to bat for her, got, attending physician statements, submitted the headache log. And then, even the argument in the appeal, part of the major context was this idea of subjectivity. And, normally we don't argue. I don't tend to want to argue any type of case law in an appeal, just because we want to save that thing for later if we needed. I felt that since we weren't able to really create a lot of new, what I deem would be compelling objective evidence, that it would be worthwhile making the arguments that courts have held subjective complaints verified by a doctor, kind of make them objective, if you will, that clinical impression. So we made arguments along that side. And then Unum, typical to what they do, they keep everything in-house on the appeal as well.
Explain what that means, because we're talking shop here amongst ourselves.
When it's in-house, it's a W-2 employee, right? It's someone who's works for Unum. They're not an outside doctor. Some companies, and Unum will do it sometimes, but generally they stay in-house. So instead of contacting one of these ECN or these other companies that will then find a doctor who will do a review and give you an opinion, they'll kind of do those opinions with their own employees. They do roundtables to do it.
I find it troubling because you would think they want to have an outside doctor perform reviews because it makes it seem a little bit less biased of a situation. But I see Unum, all their denial letters seem to be all in-house more and more on a regular basis. On mental health claims, I see it over and over, the same names over and over again. They keep on using the same people, and they're all employees of Unum. And it's like, I'm not sure if it makes our cases stronger because, when we go to court, we say, Judge, we see these cases, the same names over and over again. All they're doing is denying the claims over and over again. And these people are inherently biased because not only, are their reviews very questionable, but the people that are paying their salaries is Unum. So they're finding they have an inherent bias to find in favor of their employer because they're going to save their employer $500 a month or maybe $50,000 a month, depending on the size of the case.
Well, Alex, you know why they do that.
Of course.
It's all about the money, but the savings for Unum, who's a publicly traded company that anyone can go and look up, who's reported profits of almost $1 billion a year in the past. I haven't looked at them in the past year, but the savings for them is absolutely tremendous. You know that sending out a file to an independent medical doctor is usually a minimum of $1,000. We agree on that?
I would say that's like bare bones.
I'm being
minimum.
conservative.
Yeah.
That's a minimum, and that depends how much medical records they have. And this is just a paper review, right? I'm willing to bet, and we know from past depositions, those doctors can go through 10 to 20 in a day of a file review. So that's $10,000 to $20,000 of savings for Unum in one day. How much do you think they're paying those doctors to come in? We know what they're paying them. They don't pay them more than $150,000 a year to do file reviews. One day, they have $20,000 worth of savings when that doctor's probably making, I didn't do the math in my head, but he's not even probably making $1,000 a day for the work that he's doing. That's a 20x return for Unum. That's how a business looks at things. That's what Unum is. They're a publicly traded company that's in business to make money. They're not a not-for-profit.
And not to mention that, but they're in the risk assessment business. So
Correct.
they're like, okay, we may get zinged in court on cases, so are we still going to save more money than we may have to pay out on these practices? And the one other thing they do that I've always had issues with is that they roundtable it. So they have the appeal, they have the all in one room, if you will, discussing the case, to make it seem like they're getting together to assess it. I think it just leads to groupthink. If the doctor renders opinion, everyone else fits the narrative of that doctor's opinion. And some people like, well, how do I know if it's one of their in-house doctors that do it? Well, if you ever see one of their claim files, or in this situation with this, on appeal, according to the Department of Labor regulations now, if there's new information negative to your client, they have to give you the opportunity to respond to it. When Unum sends it, it's a hodgepodge of all their internal note keeping. If it's an outside doctor, it's a nice clean report. You know the doctor's name, where it is. So they send you 100 pages, and you're trying to go through little snippets to piece together whatever their doctor's opinion is, the way they keep their internal notes.
The other thing I wanted to comment on, because you talked about your roundtable, which I can't stand. I think that doctor who's supposed to be quasi-independent, but he's not, comes to the first meeting basically where they go, okay, guys and ladies, we got this file, and the voc rehab person sitting there, the claim rep who's reviewing the file sitting there, the manager on the claim is sitting there, and the doctor is sitting there. And this isn't stuff that we're making up. This is stuff we know because they have to document what they do under the regulations, and they put all the people who are sitting there in the meeting. And then they go, here's the plan. And they're basically like looking right at the doctor going, here's the plan for you to review. So then the doctor gets the medical records, reviews, and makes his findings and cherry picks the records to support what the claim rep or the manager's plan was. And then they deny based upon that, and they go, look, we complied with the law, we did our minimum review that we had to do, and let's see if you come back to us. And so it's exactly what happened in this particular case. And what did you do once you got the denial letter?
Yeah, well, like I said, we tried to work with her doctor. That was basically the thing we could lean on the most, the arguments made in the appeal. Where I took a chance on this one, after the appeal submitted, and, I would say within 3-4 weeks, we had a letter saying, hey, here's the new information we've assessed and we've used. You have the ability to respond to it. My experience with Unum, they're just following a formality, because if they were going to approve, they're going to approve. Generally speaking, they're going to deny. I mean, I know you have current litigation with them that the facts on the case are just staggering how they denied it. So in her situation, we had a doctor response. We wrote a response to this doctor's, but I closed with it. I'm like, we'd like you to send her to an independent medical examination because your doctor varies from our doctors. Now, it's a gamble, right? The way I was thinking is the likelihood they're going to deny her claim is probably 99%. She talks about in her headache logs almost daily. So I figured, hey, she might get a fair shake from a neurologist on this if she's having a bad day. I felt it was probably the only opportunity. So they agreed to send her to an IME. Originally, they wanted to send her with a doctor who specialized in, actually a physiatrist. So we argued not the right, you should send her to a neurologist. They found a neurological practice that would do the IME. And the one good thing is, when you look up an IME doctor, you're generally looking, are they a practicing doctor or do they just do examinations? Right. This was a practicing doctor. And she went to the IME. They wouldn't let it be video recorded, anything like that. We prepared her what to expect, the type of things that they would do. And within a week after that IME, we got an approval. So that doctor did find, and here's a classic example of, I felt since their position was it's all subjective, there's no way to verify it, our doctors know best, never spoke to her doctors, never spoke to her, so let's have an independent doctor, take a look at her and make an assessment. There's always the thing that he could come back for them. I think they're going to deny the case anyway, so we felt that this was a risk to take, and it worked out in her favor. She got a fair shake from a doctor who saw her and goes, yeah, this girl's going to have issues working. So the case was approved. Now, just yesterday, I actually got a follow-up letter from Unum after the formal approval letter, just advising us that during the IME, the doctor had indicated that there's probably other courses of treatment, and granted she doesn't have money, so she hasn't been able to get into the doctor, she has sleep issues, so recommendations of, trying to get with the neurologist who does specialize in migraines, which strangely enough, it might even open the door since this doctor is a practice and she liked the doctor, maybe even treatment within his practice even, and like she has some sleep issues. So they're saying, hey, to be under the appropriate care, you need to also look into doing this. So they're trying to set it up, but this was a one where I think Unum thought that they had it and, had a fair shake from a doctor. It doesn't always happen, it was a risk, but, in this situation, because of how hard it was to build objective evidence during the course of the appeal, it was the Hail Mary attempt, and it really panned out this time.
Well, let me give Unum credit here, because it sounds like they actually went out and hired a decent doctor to do an IME, which doesn't happen on a regular basis. So the doctor that they hired seemed to be a pretty decent human being, and with the recommendations for the future treatment, maybe it will help her.
Yeah.
And I mean, the goal of any disability insurance claim ultimately is to get your client back to work. You know what I mean? We don't want people to be on disability unless they have to be on disability, until the policy expires at retirement age. If they can get back to work, that's awesome. At least that's my goal for my clients. So hopefully your client can get back to work ultimately. But if not, then I know you're going to support her claim until the end.
Well, it's nice that you're giving them credit, but what they did is they went outside the family.
Of course. And look what happened.
And look what happened. They went out to someone who's like, you're not in our family, you're not in our network, you're not in our good old boys club, we don't control you. Oh shit, what's going to happen? And they found a doctor who probably hasn't done much for Unum in the past, doesn't care if he does again, and he just said, client came in, seems to be a sincere woman, seems to be honest about her complaints, there's nothing to indicate she's exaggerating or malingering, and I don't see how you could do the work, and that's why they don't do that. So, credit to Stephen for saying, hey, I think you should do this. But someone watching this video in a position where they're getting this letter and is saying, oh, well, you guys did it on that case and you sent your client to this independent medical exam, then I should do that. That's not always a yes, because, and this is complicated, you have to understand the law for someone who's out there. The standard of review is whether or not the insurance company acted reasonably in their review. One of the things we commonly argue is to say, look, this was a subjective complaint type thing. There's no way on paper you could tell whether or not our client's disabled. You should examine them, because otherwise there's no way for you to really know whether or not this person's complaints are credible. Now, when the insurance company sends the person out to a truly independent doctor, and if that doctor does a thorough review and comes back and says, you're not disabled, it becomes very difficult to argue that the insurance company didn't act reasonably. And that's the issue that we always roundtable in our office and say, should we send this person out? Should we ask for an IME or should we not? Now, based upon the evidence that you had in this particular case, you felt that, I don't know that I really have a good case if this goes to court, which is the next step.
I felt I had nothing to lose.
Yeah. So,
and here's the other thing. I figured they would say no. So now I have an argument they weren't being reasonable.
Exactly.
We requested because they have the power to. So in this situation, we truly felt we had nothing to lose. It was only potential for gain.
but a case definitely.
It's a case-by-case situation for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted everyone to know. So congratulations on this victory, especially with someone in a sedentary position.
And at home work. So it's really hard to argue that, they can lay down and take breaks when they need to, kind of thing. They could work laying down. So it was a really difficult, one kind of all around.
Fantastic victory. If you're someone out there with a Unum disability denial claim, feel free to reach out to Stephen, Alex, myself. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we'll always provide you with a free initial phone consultation.